Welcome to In a Prosecco, the podcast that raises a glass to moms who are transitioning from empty nester into the next beautiful phase of life as a free bird. I'm your host, Bernie Slowey. I'm a mother of two sons who have grown and flown, and I'm also a former corporate executive, filmmaker, writer, speaker, and entrepreneur who has helped women transfer into their authentic selves to uncork their infinite sparkling possibilities. So whether you're sipping a Prosecco or your favorite beverage of choice, join me as we pop open today's message in a bottle. Welcome to the very first episode of In a Prosecco. I'm your host, Bernie Slowey, and you may be wondering, what is In a Prosecco about? Because unlike the title, we will not be talking about Prosecco and the various brands, but rather what's inside. And what I mean by that is that many of my favorite conversations as a young mother through the time that I became an empty nester were conversations with girlfriends. And believe me, they were lifesavers. So, being the first episode, I thought it was only appropriate that I actually pop the cork to celebrate the occasion. And I must say, I'm kind of a pro at this, and I have no idea if this is the correct way. But in the future, I think it is probably a good thing to talk about what is Prosecco and why I drink Prosecco is because champagne gives me a headache. And I could go through a bottle with friends and not wake up with a terrible hangover. But not only that, for whatever reason, I feel like the bottle is easier to open on a Prosecco. I don't know why, but I never get tired of hearing that sound. And that was super easy, right? So this glass is special to me because it was given to me for my 50th birthday when I went to St. Lucia. And the island of St. Lucia happens to be the only island that is named after a female. And so I thought it was also appropriate to drink from this glass. But in a Prosecco, not only for the celebrations of conversations I had with my friends, and we'd created this Friday afternoon club. So when the kids were little, it'd be a way for the moms to pick up the kids after school, come together, and we'd talk about whether it was something school related or whatever's going on in our lives. Well, then the kids grew up and then decided, well, moms still need to come together because there's new life issues. And especially when it comes to all the different changes that we're experiencing. And I feel like every decade of our lives, there's always some kind of assessment of who are we, where are we? And certainly right now, as I'm going through some other changes. And so it's savoring every second and savoring all the celebrations in the bottle, but also in life in general, because I think I'm really proud of the fact that my kids have flown and grown. But with that said, there was so many things around the In a Prosecco that I've had this idea for so long. So when I turned 50 and realized that there were more years behind me than ahead of me, and that my mother was my age now when she had her stroke. She died in 2012 at the very young age of 62. And so I really want to take real importance to my health. And I think in doing that, sometimes we got to look at our mental health as just as important as our physical health. I also found out just this last week that I'm officially in menopause. So, there's a lot happening in the transitions of women as empty nesters. We're not only feeling the emotional loss of our kids and the family dynamics, but we're feeling distressed about like, are they going to be fine on their own? And then there's the very real, okay, what's happening physically to me? Body changes. I've had weight gain, hair loss, all those things that were unexplainable until I confirmed that, yep, I'm going through another. I've heard the term menopause is now a change of life, which I kind of like that because, again, it goes back to every decade, there's some kind of theme I felt like in my life that was changing. And so, with that, I cheer to you the life changes that we're going to be talking about that are not only life changing, but they're game changers for how we want to look at life. Mm. Yeah, effervescence. I love it. And the chill. I'm going to get a chiller for the table so it stays cold. And I don't plan to actually complete this whole bottle myself. that's for when guests arrive, because I plan to also have experts on the subject of this empty nester syndrome. What is it? But also because this is something else I learned, that it is not technically a clinical term. It is more of a phenomenon. It's classified as a phenomenon. It's not in the DMSV4 classification of any kind of disorder. So I don't think that this is a topic that we get to talk about very often. And when we, go through these emotions and the feels are real, there's really an expectation like when life moves on, but we don't really go into the deep dive. What is this about? And what I feel that I learned is that there were really unresolved issues from childhood and the relationship that I had with not just my mother, but with my father, because of the parent that I became, was really to make up for things that I didn't have when I was young. And so that really, for me, was an eye opening like, well, I parented the way that I parented because it was what I wanted and what I observed with my friends and what I admired about how their parents parented them. And what I will go into in future episodes is how I learned that I was parentified. So, really being a parent to my parents. So, when I had my own children, by the way, I didn't think I was even going to have children. I really thought I was going to tie my tubes at 18 because I'm the oldest, also. And so I was always babysitting and thought, I'm never going to have kids because then I have to be tied up for, having to watch my kids. But really, what I didn't realize again, even that time, like I didn't want to mess up anybody else's life. If I could prevent it, I didn't want to have kids of my own. Then when I met my husband and I saw how he took care of his dog, but then we babysat a friend's puppy and I saw how good he was with the puppy, that I was like, if he's that good with dogs, I wonder how he would be with it as a dad. It sounds ridiculous, but it was a measurement for me as far as someone who was very nurturing, and that's what I wanted to have as a father and a partner if I was ever gonna have kids. So, I think we've done a pretty good job. We'll go into some of the, dissecting each stage of even with the kids, and they're born and getting ready for becoming a parent and juggling life with work and career. And then finances are a real issue as well as those things change. And also as the dynamics of the family changing and from middle school or from elementary school to middle school through high school to the time that whether their next path is college or whether their path is to go to the military or a trade or taking a gap year or whatever it is. What I appreciate having these conversations with my girlfriends was very much about the support needed to not just be about our role as mom, as parent, but it's really important to turn that spotlight and attention for all the energy that we've poured into our families and our kids to actually give us nourishment and put that spotlight back on ourselves. So, really, this is permission to say it's okay to start looking at ourselves in the mirror and where are we in our life now? And how do we want to take that mindset from empty nester, filling whatever that void is, so that we can really fly as free birds and living fully with zest and being on purpose to do whatever what it is in our next chapter of a career, next chapter of a hobby, to live life fully and with our life purpose. Cheers to that. Mm. So now we're understanding a little bit of inner prosecco. The thing I think about with inner prosecco and how I would love to see the topics come in from the audience as well. So if you have any ideas that we don't cover, because I plan on having the experts come in, but also other moms with their inspirational stories and what they've done with their next chapter. When, interestingly, our kids went through COVID, my youngest didn't, or my oldest went off to college. So he was at a freshman in Colorado, and my youngest was still at home, and COVID hit. And my youngest, who is in his senior year, does not get a graduation, did not get to have prom, And so some of those things changed and shifted for he and his peers so that when he decided to go off to college, things were different. And I think there was a resilience that these awesome kids had to overcome the ceremonies that were very traditional. And so things not only shifted in their life experience, that also as a nation, as the world went through this pandemic change, I realized that the kids really don't go away. We have this empty nester feel like, oh, the kids are grown and flown. Well, my oldest had to come back from college. And then my youngest probably was thrilled that his big brother was home because with my two sons that are just a year apart, they actually had more time together. And the feels that I had with the oldest son going away and then returning home, it was one of those, okay, now we're all back in the same house again. So it wasn't really until my youngest went off to college that I felt the true feelings of that syndrome of the loss and distress. And even though I was sad, but I didn't feel lonely because I did have my network of friends still coming together and talking about all the challenges, but recognizing that I needed to still focus on me. So when I had left my 20-year banking career and became the class mom and focused on the kids a lot. I can't remember who told me that it sounds like you're a work at home mom because I still had to have something that was mine. So I opened up different businesses and dabbled in different things, but I really felt that my primary focus was on the kids. So that when my youngest did finally leave the house and started school despite COVID, I did not want to be at home alone when that happened. So my husband said, you've always talked about being spontaneous when we became empty nesters. So let's go somewhere. And so we did. And COVID was the ideal time to actually travel because the tickets were so cheap for flights and a lot of cancellations at resorts. And so it was easy to find flights, it was easy to book. And we came to Marco Island in Florida and spent a week where I did not want to be at home to remind myself that the kids weren't there. And going to their rooms, my oldest had moved into an apartment, so all his furniture was out of his house. My youngest, his furniture was still in his room, but it was empty and clean. And what I mean by that is it was never clean. And so everything was different. I didn't want that constant reminder. And so one of the things that I think if I'm going to do a specific episode about preparing for that time so that you know what to do and maybe some suggestions from others about steps or just things to be able to yes, I think it's important to feel the feels, but also navigate so to cope and have like a little softer landing. And so we left and we were gone for a week and it was the best thing. I didn't want to be reminded at home and to be away and it felt like vacation so that when I did come home it was all right, now I have permission to focus on what I want to do. And some really cool things happened. My husband and I actually, we did one of those home delivery dinner services. And so we were actually cooking together. And I am not the cook in the house. Thankfully, he is. And so I was really more sous chef. But it was just something to like, we never did that before because all of the schedules around the kids, whether they were playing sports to practice, to go on to their games or whatever the activity. And so sometimes dinners were just even so late, like at 9 or 10 o'clock. And it wasn't like the connection that I had because I think also that is what empty nesting does for you. It really has you look at, your partner and not a chance just to reconnect on yourself, but who's your partner without the kids? Because that was for 18 for us, it was 20 years of not having or the kids really being the focus and not by accident, it's just part of life. And so I think it was a way for us to like, okay, that's his passion is cooking and for me to be involved, but also to look at like, well, what are the things that really interest me now? And so I think it's so important to find hobbies and be able to identify maybe those things that you put on the shelf and to bring that back. And, it's a new era. So that we were able to not only have like podcasts, will listen to, but the social media platforms that you can go through and share ideas, but also collect ideas on what to do. So I'm really wanting to be able to bring some great ideas to you when you're looking at major life shift and what those hobbies are that you want. And I think that more importantly, empty nesting is about how to refeather that nest. And what I mean by that is that this is an inner journey that I have found to not only be coping as on a psychological level, but I really feel that this is a chance to reconnect your body, mind, heart, so that on a spiritual level, that it's running on all cylinders. This is a chance where, the kids are going to come back, but how are you going to be the best role model? Because whether they're coming home for a pandemic, they're coming home for the holidays, they're coming home because they just want a home cooked meal or do the laundry, whatever the case may be, introduce the new boyfriend, girlfriend. How are we now outside of being a parent? Because we want our kids to be the young adults that their perspective on life is very much of, did we get them prepared? So when they do come home, are they going to be like, gosh, mom just really wants it all to be about me? Or are they going to be really excited that, hey, mom and dad are doing great? That makes me feel better and that I can go and fly and be the person that I need to be. I think that's so important for parents to understand that the other flip of the coin is kids are paying attention too. They're very observant from day one. They pick up on us. They pick up on our energy. They pick up on 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 every frequency of the stresses. And so for them to understand that mom and dad are okay, and especially mom, because I think, hey, dads are very important, but home is wherever mom is, and whatever physical location she is, wherever she is mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, that is a huge impact on children. So when we moved from Colorado to Florida, my younger son was still in college, and I wanted to wait to move until he was actually graduated so they had a home to come to. It was just down, 45 minutes away at the most. And we decided to go ahead and pick up and leave. And this was just a year ago. When we asked our son about whether or not he was okay with it, he was like, yes, please, because we moved to Florida. So it was warmer. And he said, it would give me a way to get away from the cold. And the thing is, what we found is that it was the best thing to watch him adulting. And I really am glad now that we made that decision because emotionally I was still tied and I'd grown up in the same state for 39 years. We raised our children for nearly 20 years in the same house. So for us to pick up and move, it was a big deal. That's probably one thing that I would say too is like, if you're going to make a decision, don't make the decision based on what your kids want. It's time to cut the umbilical cord and make the decisions that you want. So when people asked, like, are you moving to Florida for retirement? Because I guess everybody assumes that when you move to Florida, it's retirement. I said, no, I moved because I wanted to be here for re-inspirement. Because I think that I want to be able to do whatever in my next chapter that I absolutely love. So my body of work and all the career stuff that I've done to, the corporate, being a solopreneur, a multipreneur, there are so many different hats and roles that I'd played that I wanted to really find what is my passion truly. And that's what I think has been exciting is that it's like going back to school in a way and to reignite some of that passion with my husband has been important because we don't have the distractions and he's going through the same thing. He has his own thing where he's like, okay, I did this for so many years. What's my next chapter? And so to give us the chance and opportunity to do that and meet new people and still stay connected. The beauty of the era I was talking about, being able to have like information at our fingertips, is that we're also able to keep in touch with friends much easier. So the FaceTiming or Zoom, that it's not that far. And what's also interesting is when you move to a state that when you were landlocked, in Colorado to moving to, more water, your friends want to come visit you. So when that does happen, you definitely need to set up a calendar. I love my friends. I want to see them. Believe me, it's that this change is exciting for them too, because they're kind of curious, and that's okay. And I think it's kind of one of those testing the waters. Is it someplace that I might move to? And that is my secret mission, actually. I want all my friends to come move with me, and I just want a cul-de-sac of all of us reunited where we can have Friday afternoon clubs again. Like we don't already over Zoom. But this is the next chapter phase. I think that bringing inner prosecco to you is my goal is that you're pouring your glass of whether it's prosecco or your beverage of choice, a Pellegrino, a Perrier, whatever, that we're in the living room or on the patio together and having these conversations, because I know that there's a lot to explore in this. But, when I did my film project, I learned so much that life is really kind of like a movie. And so I'll talk more about the film project, but the things that I learned about the movie process is that I had the opportunity to be both behind the camera and in front of the camera. And perspective is so critical to determining your happiness in how you see the world and how you see your life and how you see yourself. So I look at re-inspirement as a formula from this movie making process. So not only do you have a chance to reframe how you see your life and the life around you, because there's also different perspectives. I said, your spouse is going to have perspective on this life change. And so will the kids. So how do you navigate that? Because as moms, we're really the core. And so we're role models for those around us. And then rescripting, because we have a script of life, of course, what story we have from childhood. And I'll dive into a whole lot about why I overcompensated as a parent, and recognizing that what I learned from my parents was what not to do. So, and looking and learning how to do it differently and what I'd hoped to do it better, and my children teaching me so much about, Mom, what you wanted doesn't mean that's what we want. And so to really understand that rescripting is about telling our story, but how we want to share that story and how to write that story in the future for the next chapter. Then there's just redirecting. So I ended up directing this movie that happened to accidentally become my story. And the big aha was, wow, not only am I seeing that, writing the story and editing it and going to post production, but directing my movie about my story is really transferred into how we direct our lives. And there are so many things I can talk about that. That's another episode for sure. But when we look at how to take action, there's a toolbox that I'm wanting to present in a Prosecco. So not just all the different fun Prosecco brands we can drink, but I've been really fortunate to be able to, I had a retreat business where I took that same body, mind, heart, and spirit connection to seeing how when women have a chance to really connect on all four spectrums, that the evolution, the transformation that can happen to really open our eyes to possibilities. So that's what I want, because of the redirecting means that what action do we take based on the tools we're given, and whatever information that you hear, if it resonates for you, fantastic. And if something doesn't resonate, well, then you just leave it. But the beauty of the redirecting is that you're in the director's chair. Not only can you decide what action to take, but sometimes it's embracing the surrendering to the process. So if you are feeling the feels, allow that, embrace it, and then lead into the next ability to, whatever new ideas that you're presented with. I want to provide some of the magic too in this, because it will be an evolution to becoming a free bird. And it is liberating. And not only is it something that I'm hoping that we can explore on a scientific level, but also on a very spiritual level as well. So, with that said, as I finish my last sip, but not last flute glass, I'm excited to explore more topics with you and bring on guests that I'm excited to learn more from. And we'll just see where this goes, because there's always going to be whatever the message in the bottle. And I tell you what, it is also some truth serum. So until the next episode, thank you for joining me today. And we'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this episode of In a Prosecco, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Rate and review the show, and please do comment and share ideas for topics that are important to you. A friend who cares is a friend who shares. Here's a toast to you on your re-inspirement journey. Cheers.